Hey, everybody. How is everybody doing? Hopefully you all can hear me. I'm finishing up something here, so one sec. Can you all hear me? Give me a response there up in the Whoa, this is all like turned down backwards. Okay, cool, guys. So, wow. Well, while people are hopping on here, yeah, this is like weird because it's like backwards. So like I don't know why it's doing that, but one moment. Oh, I know why. Hold on. It's got my different camera. Yeah. Yeah, except it's backwards because, yeah. Sorry, I have like one last minute work thing that just came up. So I am finishing that while you all are hopping on here, and then we're going to start the conversation. Let's start with this. I want to see in the comments here, start throwing up. I don't know. I guess it's showing up backwards to me, MK. I don't know what. I don't know. It looks backwards normally to me. But one second here. But yeah, let's prompt it with this. Let's see some of your immediate. Thank you, Cameron. That is awesome. I will be done with what I had like a. Just to give you guys a heads up, the reason I'm like not super engaged at the moment, I own a business and you never sleep, and it's like 10:45 here, and I got something I have to get done before 11, and so I'm done in like 2 seconds, and it came up right as the. Right as I was about to live stream, and I thought this would be done earlier. So hold on 1 second. I'm almost done. Garrett Pope, I 100% agree. I cannot wait until Wheel of Time is ready to go. So all right, I'm gonna give you guys while my thing is finishing up here. I'm gonna keep peeking, and then I'll be all done in a second. But I am gonna give you my immediate reaction. So that episode, I actually thought going into like, given what we've already gotten for the season, I actually didn't think like, I thought there were some good character moments in the episode. I thought there were some really good shots. I'm a huge fan of cinematography. So like I thought there were some really good long shots, and they did some good setups. I'm going to talk about the good things. I'm going to try to at least. They did a good job with the production values, as always. I thought there was some great acting. I absolutely love Peter Dinklage. I thought he was outstanding in some of his dialogue and scenes like that. But my God, what a horrible season! Like you could not have. I think it would be harder to screw it up worse than they did. If we came up with, like, if I got together with a couple of you and I said, what would be some of the dumbest story arcs that we could pull off? I think we could have. I don't know if we could have come up with something dumber than what they did. I really don't. I don't know how they arrived here. There's a lot of factors. I'm going to break this down in a video that's coming. That's going to come out here soon. And I apologize, guys, for the lack of video content. I am actually in the middle of moving. So just a heads up, like here this next week. First of all, this background is going to go away. I'm actually going to build a set at my new place. But I am going to be videos are going to be very sparse for the next week. I have a couple that I've got like recorded. I'm just not sure if I'm going to get them out. But any case, sorry, I'm tangenting all over the place. Okay, good. I'm done with my work stuff. So, wow, that was bad. some of the main reasons I think for why it ended up bad is because they backed themselves into the corner with having to fit basically what could have been 2 or 3 more full seasons, and they decided they were going to do it in 2 seasons of 6 episodes. And so because they did that, well, I mean, you saw some really crappy, lazy writing. And so for me, I guess my initial thoughts from just that last episode, finally being done with this, it's kind of a breath of fresh air, because it was so painful watching this the last 4 or 5 episodes. This may be a controversial opinion. I've kind of gotten into this debate with MK in my Discord. I actually think the season started going horrible, or the show started going horrible back in season 5. Really the Dorne storyline, when they went to Dorne, that was the beginning of the end of the good writing for the show. First of all, they butchered Dorne. Like, if you've read the books, they absolutely butchered Dorne. Horrible. And I think that was the beginning. There were still some great episodes. There were still some great moments there. But Daniel Lobo's right. The moment they passed the books, it just got bad. And some of that we can put on the hubris of the writers. Some of that we can lay at George R.R. Martin's feet. Like, again, I don't know that we can expect writers to write better material than the original writer. I mean, like with Brandon Sanderson, when he took over Wheel of Time, I don't think any of us thought he'll be better than Robert Jordan was at writing the Wheel of Time, at least. Okay, I don't know that anybody thought that. So I don't know that it's necessarily like, I don't want to lay this all at the feet of D&D, because George R.R. Martin has taken his good old time releasing books. We thought back in the day when Wheel of Time wasn't finished, we would get on Robert Jordan for taking 3 or 4 years between a book. Like, that was the longest he went. And I remember thinking, like, we were bashing on him in the community for not finishing it until we found out he was sick. But there's just no excuse for George R.R. Martin right now. I mean, I don't even get it. So I do put some of this blame. I don't know that he is ever going to finish him. I'm not sure that he will at this point. I wonder if he how do I put it? I wonder if he's kind of lost the creative momentum for wanting to finish it because of the show. Okay, I wonder if that's the case. So I don't know. Maybe it's because the TV show's out there, it's just not as much fun to write anymore. I wonder about that. But man, so look, I don't want to turn this into a bash fest totally. Although I do want to, and I'm going to start going through your comments in a minute. I just kind of wanted to get my opinion out first, and then I'll start reading all through your comments here and try to go back a little bit. But I just felt like they destroyed character arcs. That was how to rush a character arc. And I think for the last 2 seasons specifically, and possibly back 3 seasons, it shifted from being a very character and relationship-driven storyline to an event-based storyline. And so what I mean by that is things happened to advance the plot. Okay, so rather than having a convoluted way of getting to a plot point, like let's use the Red Wedding, for instance. Okay, the Red Wedding was a shocker. It subverted expectations. It's a wonderful subversion of tropes. And it's actually one of the reasons why Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire was so good, is because of moments like that. But it's also because of the subtle buildup to that moment. Okay, that moment would not have been what it was if you couldn't see the seeds of it being planted throughout. You could make the argument they tried to plant the seeds of Dany's madness and craziness, but I don't think I think they failed miserably at actually doing that. So in reality, what they moved to was, we need the plot to move forward, so we're just going to have big events happen that make the plot move. So going back to last season, an example of that is where Dany on a dragon mysteriously teleports 4,000 miles in a matter of an hour to rescue everybody that are deep. Somehow Gendry can run like a a 2-minute mile and gets back to the Eastwatch by the Sea faster than it took them to march days. Like, that was ridiculous. Okay, we all knew it was ridiculous. It killed the realism of it, but it was an event that happened to happen. So that was ridiculous. That was kind of the beginnings of this. And that whole plot line in general, like, you knew they wanted to give the Night King a dragon, and that's why they sent all of these people to capture one white. It's such a stupid plot line if you really think about that, so that they could convince Cersei, who out of character would never do a ceasefire. We all knew that. Tyrion should know that. They somehow turned Tyrion from being clever and manipulative and 5 steps ahead of everybody, and they turned him into a bumbling idiot. Where he can't do anything right, and he's being outmaneuvered by people that he's very much smarter than. Like, and there's not a lot of realism in that. It lost it. And then, so even in this season, they kill a dragon with somehow they are able to hide their ships, and then semi-automatic ballistas all of a sudden. But then she has one dragon, and there are 5,000 of those ballista things everywhere, and lo and behold, the scorpions, and lo and behold, she can't get hit by any of them all of a sudden. Like, those were just events to drive the plot. And so I really feel like they did a poor job of execution on just about everything. Okay, just about everything they executed poorly. The only saving grace I can give is I feel like the production value remained really high, and it better be for the money they spent. And it was very cinematic. There were some beautiful shots, but they just happened to be horrible plot lines. So that's my opinion in a nutshell. I'm going to dive into some of yours. And I apologize, guys. My voice is going. So if I keep drinking tea and making ridiculous sounds, sorry. But I'm going to scroll back a little bit here. If you guys, I'm going to try to read through your comments. They're coming in fairly fast here. So, yeah, if you want to, just try to get my attention somehow. But hard to believe Jon would have survived the throne room, says Lee Kelly. Grey Worm would have killed him on the spot. I agree. I think it's kind of weird that they would have taken him prisoner. Who would have been deciding? I really hate what they did with Grey Worm. I understand Grey Worm being pissed at Jon killing Dany, but I don't see Grey Worm being cool with the execution. He lost his heart with Missandei. They just turned him into a villain. It's like he and Dany decided to flip a switch and turn into villains. I hated that. I'm a huge Sanderson fan as well. I think he's wonderful. The time they decided to be The Walking Dead, abandoned some characters to fill the screen with undead. Yes, unreal. Actually, The Walking Dead is a great example. So adaptations in general. So The Walking Dead, in case some of you don't know, The Walking Dead is actually an adaptation of a graphic novel. So it's not original. And they have decided, I think where The Walking Dead was really good is when they were following pretty well the comic books. It started to get out there when they decided to do their own thing and separate. They actually started adding in their own writing, and these TV show writers aren't as good. So the story suffers. And The Walking Dead is an example of that, and here's where we are again. Now, again, that's not entirely D&D's fault that George R.R. Martin didn't give them good material. But, man, I still feel like a couple of us could have gotten in a room and brainstormed how to end this better than what we got. They should have incorporated traveling for real. Sure. Yeah. Apparently Dany can channel the one power. Sam's trip from Old Town to Winterfell in about 2 weeks is a bit ridiculous. It absolutely is. If you guys have any idea about the size of Westeros, it's enormous. And so that trip from Winterfell to Old Town is roughly 4,000 or 5,000 miles. So to try to think that you could cover that in 2 weeks in a wagon is pretty ridiculous. So music is always wonderful. Agreed. I thought Drogon would have eaten Jon. And let's talk about that for a minute. Why do you guys think that Drogon let Jon live? I'd love to see what your thoughts are there. I mean, part of it could be that he's a Targaryen, and I think that's maybe what they were going for. But he wasn't Drogon's dad like Dany was Drogon's mom. So I think that's funny. Why wouldn't John trial by combat and just fight Grey Worm? That would have been awesome to see. Absolutely. So, okay, because he's a dragon. And I agree. I think it's because he's a dragon, even though you can't seem to spell dragon, MK. And they wanted him alive, Daniel. I agree. I think it's just because they didn't want to kill John. The way that went down, it seems to be unlikely that the Unsullied are going to allow Dany to be alone in a throne room with John, given that it seems like he's a little unhinged. I don't know about you all, but that just seemed a little, given everything else we knew, it didn't seem like they were going to let John or anybody get that close to Dany without being guarded. So I thought that was another major plot hole. Okay. Sorry, I think MK there's a delay, so I don't see what you guys write except for a second. So let's talk about this. I am going to be doing a video basically, and this is something I've been excited to make. I wanted to wait until this episode before after this was over to make this video. I thought about doing it last week, but I didn't want to be emotional. I'm going to make a video here that hopefully will release either, I don't know if it's going to get out tomorrow, but maybe by Tuesday. I want to make a video that basically takes everything that we can learn or everything that the showrunners for the Wheel of Time can learn from Game of Thrones, the show. So that's going to be the good, the bad. Like, what are some things that can pull from that? I'm not going to get into my opinion too much on that right now because I am making a video on that topic, and you guys can look for that here soon because I think there's a lot to learn. I think, this is the first major popular fantasy series of its type to get this kind of popularity and get this kind of budget. And so there are going to be things they succeeded at, and there are going to be things that they failed at. So what I'm hoping is that then we can learn from that so that Wheel of Time doesn't make the same mistakes. Okay. Now I do think Wheel of Time, I will say this, Wheel of Time has some major, major advantages over the Game of Thrones, over A Song of Ice and Fire. For one, it's completely finished. So there is no need to, make stuff up. I will argue to you all, and I think this may cause a little bit of fan division. I think they are going to add some stuff. As much as they're going to take out, they are going to need to add some things to the Wheel of Time show. I'll talk about that in another video as well, but just come to mind, like, they're going to give some backstory to some of the Forsaken, for instance. We're going to see more stuff that isn't necessarily in the books. So I do think that's going to happen. Are they implying Drogon is more morally aware than we give dragons credit for? He seemed aware of what it meant to melt the throne down. And I agree, Lee. Again, they never really specified whether the dragons are really smart, although at times they seemed incredibly smart. They seem to have an innate idea of who Targaryens are, even though, who knows. So Jon and Aemon Targaryen both have the same story. They refused the women they loved, the crown, and both ended up with the Night's Watch. Yes. I think it's kind of funny that there is still a Night's Watch. I mean, I guess they need to guard against the rest of the wildlings that aren't there. I mean, what are the Thyns are still left? I can't think of how many wildlings there probably still are, but what are they guarding against is a good question. And now that the North is independent again, is the Seven Kingdoms or the Six Kingdoms responsible for sending things to the night to the wall? When you stand up, does your head hit the ceiling? Pretty damn close. Okay, dragons are wise. Yes, they are. Main characters in Wheel of Time don't die for nothing. The books are more focused on the central characters in Wheel of Time. So the one argument you can make against the Wheel of Time there is that a lot of the Wheel of Time characters tend to have even more plot armor. Like, one of the major criticisms of this season of Game of Thrones is how all the major characters seem to survive stuff. So I would say that is actually a problem in the Wheel of Time. Not many of the main characters die until the end, and then a lot of them do. But I'm not going to get. I know we have some. We're not going to get into too many Wheel of Time major spoilers here because I know we have some non folks in here for that. But that is one thing. Like, Wheel of Time does kill a few major characters. I mean, at least Moraine appears to be killed. Tom appears to be killed at some point, but it doesn't feel like there's any real danger at any of those points. I guess I just thought of an analogy with Bran getting the throne. How stupid is that? That makes my head hurt that Bran somehow ended up winning the Game of Thrones. Think about that. This is like, and this is not a spoiler because this is, I think, the assumption for people in the Wheel of Time. This would like Rand being built up to be the Dragon Reborn, and then having Swan Sanche somehow win the last battle. You'd be like, wait, what? Huh? So, yeah, any case, back to what I was saying, Wheel of Time has a couple major advantages. One is the story's finished. But the other one, and this is, again, my opinion, but I am a fan of both series. So I want to be very clear here. I do not hate Game of Thrones. I do not hate A Song of Ice and Fire. In fact, I'm going through a reread of them right now. I've read them a couple of times. By the way, the audiobook guy that does Game of Thrones, if any of you guys have ever listened to that, I could listen to that dude read the phone book. He has got the coolest British accent I've ever heard. I wish I talked like that. So, any case, but I do not hate those books, but I will say this. I think that Wheel of Time is a much more cinematic. I think that it is a much better story. That's what I think. And again, that's my opinion. I know other people are going to disagree with that. I think it's a better story. I definitely think it's a better adaptable story. There are much more relatable characters. There are still black and white, there are gray area characters, which is the same thing in Game of Thrones. There are characters that are gray, morally gray. Those exist in Wheel of Time too. They just have an inherent goodness, but they're forced to make decisions. Because let's think about this. We want characters that we can relate to, and we all, at our core, at least hopefully I can speak for me, I inherently want to think that I'm a good person. I inherently want to think that I'm good, and I'm going to make mistakes or I'm going to do things out of self-interest, no doubt. But at my core, I want to do the right thing. Okay? And Wheel of Time is full of those characters, of having an inner morality, but they're forced into places where they need to make difficult decisions. One that comes to mind is Perrin when he's trying to get his wife back. There's some things, again, I'm not going to get into that, but yeah. So Bran winning the Game of Thrones to me was so dumb because I felt like that was unearned. So call me, I'm not like a radical feminist or anything, but here's what I will say. Here's what I don't like about what they did. Okay. What I don't like is we built Daenerys up to be one of the greatest characters in fantasy and basically on TV. Like, she's a role model as a strong woman who has a strong moral compass that stands up for people. Okay. We love that about her. And then they turn her into this crazy person on a dime. Okay. And every other time she's ever done violence, it's been for the sake of saving people. But now she just decides to kill children. Okay. And then, I feel like what they did, this is a male savior complex where we had to finally get a male who did nothing to come in and be the king. It drove me batty to watch that happen, of like Daenerys, who had all this buildup, who had done everything to earn it, and then we hand it to the guy who even disappeared for an entire season of the books. Joe, I feel like the Game of Thrones writer tried hard to be unpredictable. Yes. See, that they tried to be unpredictable for the sake of being unpredictable. And it butchered the story. 100% agree. In Game of Thrones, it seems like all the characters don't believe that any of their decisions are bad. And you know what? To a degree, I disagree. That's not totally true, because there are times where there are morally conflicted characters, but those are the characters we tend to identify with. So, for instance, Tyrion. Tyrion knows when he's made mistakes. We saw a touching scene actually in this episode where he did that. That's who we identify with. I don't think many of us identified too much with Cersei. She was a villain and she was a complex villain, but I didn't identify with her. I don't think any of us would, in good conscience, make the decisions that she did. Nobody really identified with Ramsay Bolton. Okay, so she's a Targaryen. Flip the coin, Titus. Yeah, but I did. We already flipped the coin with her, and she turned out positive. She was a good. That was out of character for her to all of a sudden go from I'm going to save everybody to, you know what? I'm just going to murder all the kids, even when I don't have to, and I've already won the battle. She had already won, so I don't buy that. Wheel of Time has so many powerful female characters, whereas Game of Thrones relies solely on male characters to save the day. Josh, I agree with you. But they didn't have to do that, and honestly, Game of Thrones had some great, strong female characters. Hold on. I'm losing my voice again. Man, might have to end this soon. I'm losing my voice. So Daniel Libo, let's talk about that. If they wanted Dany to end up being crazy, right? We want Dany to go nuts. We want her to be the Mad Queen. There needed to be more foreshadowing to it, and we needed to see a turn in her character earlier. Okay, we needed to see her, as she lost people, make increasingly more and more irrational decisions, because there was a way to justify almost everything that she did. She just, it could have been executed better. And I think a lot of that really has to do with the time. If they had had more episodes, like if this had been a 10-season episode, or 10-episode season, I should say, they could have done it. They could have done it justice. She crucified people, Anthony. Yes, she crucified the people that crucified the children. You got to keep in mind, those were slavers that, to keep her away, crucified hundreds of kids on her way to Marine. So what she did is she crucified them back. That's what she did, those masters. So again, all of the violence that she had done was in protection of the innocent. In no way, shape, or form had she ever executed the innocent for no reason. Okay, they hinted at, not at madness, they hinted at violence, Travis Michael. I don't believe they ever hinted at madness. Madness is irrational thought. Okay, her father, so if you've read the books, this is where I disagree with this statement. Her father, after he knew he was losing, okay, irrationally decided that if I can't have the throne, I'm going to kill everybody and nobody can have it. That's why he wanted to burn the city down. Okay, he was crazy. He thought everybody was out to get him. Okay, he actually saw things. He was having hallucinations. He was crazy. Okay, Dany was never crazy. Okay, she would get emotional, but she kept her emotions in check. Okay, but her emotions were always stirred by the pain of the underrepresented. She always stood up for the slaves, for the downtrodden, for the poor. Her anger came when people defied her in that way. Okay, her speech in front of Karth was mad because she was going to die. And she knew she had nothing. So, yeah, and yes, it does matter that she killed people just as horrible as they did. It does matter because in the end, her rationale or her reasons for doing so and the people that she did do it to were different. So, in the end, there was no justification for her character destroying the city. There just wasn't a justification for that. Okay? She had won that battle. They had won it. The soldiers had thrown their arms down. They had won. She didn't need to kill the people. And that's not in character for her. They just wanted her to be crazy. So, any case, JS, I agree. George R. R. Martin is the one to blame here. 100% agree. Okay. Bran was always a side character for me, and then he felt shoved in the spotlight. 100% agree. I thought that was ridiculous. Okay, I think they needed me a few more episodes. I agree. They actually really needed probably another season or two. They could have wrapped up the different plot lines. Like the Night King could have been a whole season worth of plot line had they done it correctly. Cersei and the war there, that could have been a whole season with more political maneuvering. So let me see here. I'm going to scroll back a little bit. Sorry, guys, if I'm missing your comments. There's a lot of them, and I've been talking too much. So what do you guys, let me pose a question to you. I'd love to hear your answers on this because I am making a video on it, so I'm going to hold back my opinion, but I'd love to see your thoughts. What are the major things that you all think that the Wheel of Time showrunners can learn from Game of Thrones? Now, there could be positive things too, okay? But what about so what positive things do you think they can learn? What negative things do you think they can learn? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Don't subvert expectations. See, I don't think they need to modify. Gabriel, the reason I don't think that's going to be something we need to worry about is that's not the style that Robert Jordan wrote with, was just to subvert expectations. There are a couple surprise, like cool maneuvering moments, like where you see Rand have a plan come together. But they're not. I don't think they're going to have to change the story, and I don't think they will change the story. It's completed. There's not going to be any need for a change in the story. I think they may give more backstory to people, but I don't think they're going to change it. Don't rush. Agree. Thank you, Titus. I agree. Thank you. I'm hoping this is closure for me. But don't rush the story. I agree. So if I have one hesitation so far, guys, on what we've heard, there's a part of me that likes the fact that it looks like so far the first season of Wheel of Time is going to be 2 books. But there's another part of me that's a little scared that they might be rushing it. So I am a little cautious of that. Okay. Keep the approach to storytelling consistent throughout the series. Part of the fan animosity is driven by the inconsistency of approach on comparing the last 2 seasons with the first 6. 100% agree. In fact, like I said, I actually think the start of the downfall was in season 5, but primarily season 6, 7, and 8 were bad to me. Season 6 was less bad, but season 7 and 8 were awful. There were too many missing things in Game of Thrones compared to the books. I agree, but the flip side is, let's talk like Lady Stoneheart. I'm just not sure. I think that would have been cool fan service, but I'm not sure how that drives the plot forward. Like having Lady Stoneheart be a part of it. George R. Here's, guys, so if you need perspective, because I don't know how old a lot of you are, but this is an issue when you write epic fantasy. Robert Jordan had the problem of he started so many different directions in his story, okay, that it got so overwhelming that he even realized that he needed to like clip some of them and get back to going. So like Knife of Dreams is where he kind of like, all right, I need to end these storylines so I can get this focused. George R. R. Martin has done the same thing. There are so many different storylines going on in his books. If you're making a TV series and you don't know where he's heading with a lot of this stuff, there's just a lot. And so they had to cut some of it. I get that, because it didn't seem like a lot of them, like, again, Lady Stoneheart doesn't tie in too much to the significant plot of the books. So Travis Michael, the first 2 books will be a good test. They're a little slower paced than the rest of the series. I'm not sure I agree with that. I actually think they're some of the Eye of the World is fairly slow paced in terms of scope, because we're really not seeing multiple characters in different directions. But The Great Hunt reads like that's an adventure story. It's a heist. It's boom, 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 boom. There's things happening. I'm not sure condensing that into 4 or 5 episodes is going to do it justice. Okay, so I don't know. I have not said any spoilers. I just said he wraps up some plot points, and he already knows that. Wiley, they need to keep the lore, the historical background of the story, or will lack cohesion. 100% agree. And lore is a lot harder to add in a television series because you don't get to read a lot of it. So what I think they're going to do, I think you're going to see a couple things. Number one, I think we'll see more backstory. One of the things that Game of Thrones did, some of you guys may or may not have watched these. I'll try to find them some point and link them to you. But Game of Thrones did these animated features. They're on YouTube. They're really long. They're like an hour long, and they're narrated by the actors and actresses who play the characters, talking about the history of the various kingdoms in Westeros. So there's one by Charles Dance where he talks about the Lannisters. It's awesome, and you get to hear the history and some of the backstory. They released those years ago, and it's kind of a way to add the backstory without having to put it in the show. Definitely watch those, guys, if you hadn't done that. Okay. Dismissing Lady Stoneheart as not relevant is rather presumptuous of you. Well, at this point, I don't. You're right. We don't know if she's going to be relevant. I would say up to the story that they had so far, she's relevant in the minor plot that she's involved in. She's not relevant in the overall arc of the story. So she could easily be removed and not have much change. And that's exactly what they did in the show. So will she prove to be more relevant? Very possibly. But from what we know so far, not really. I feel like we need to get the point of view from minor characters correct where we're viewing the three boys, particularly Rand, because his presence and feel changes much throughout the story. Yeah, I agree, Joe. One of the beauties of, and actually this is a beauty of George R.R. Martin too, he does a good job on perspective. So again, if you've read those books, he writes from different perspectives all the time. And so you guys hear me talk about this when I talk about Robert Jordan all the time. He is a master of the unreliable narrator. And it's hard to understand that the first time you read it, because I think, like for me, when I first read the series, I thought Rand was totally sane because I cheered for Rand because we usually saw things through his eyes. Later, though, you start to realize Rand is a very unreliable narrator. Okay, so think Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye. He's an unreliable narrator. His opinions are not necessarily the truth. And so Robert Jordan does an amazing job of that. Okay, so does George R.R. Martin. Okay, he's a great writer. And so because they both do that, you get to see a lot of minor character points of view. And in doing that, you get different perspectives and different opinions and different thoughts. And I think that's great. And I think that's something that's going to be hard to portray on screen. But they, obviously they did a fairly good job of it for 5 seasons with Game of Thrones. So, all right. The second half of season 1 of Wheel of Time will be what separates it from Lord of the Rings fantasy, because that's where the book really introduces some of the unique aspects of the characters. I agree. I do think also they're going to need, I think they need to distinguish the magic system. Channeling, I think in maybe episode 2 of Wheel of Time. Hopefully this will be spoilers for Eye of the World, I guess, not major spoilers, but where Moraine is teaching Egwene about channeling. I think that can be a major expositional piece there where they explain the 5 powers and they explain channeling. Those are kind of cool things if it's shown correctly. So I think that can separate from Lord of the Rings too, because this is a hard magic system, as where Lord of the Rings is a very soft magic system that's kind of wide open and things happen because they happen. Okay. Okay. You screwed up your finale when a live chat reaction about discussing it involves into talking about other fantasy adaptations and how they can learn from its numerous mistakes. It's sad that we got to this point, is it not? I did not, I'll be honest with you guys, I did not have high hopes for this season after last season. I thought last season was written so poorly. And I thought it was actually terrible. I really did not enjoy the last season, like season 7 of Game of Thrones. I did not enjoy it. I thought it was bad writing. I thought it was lazy writing. I thought they could have accomplished a lot of the same things without the same stupid, dumb plot stuff. They really, I'll tell you what they did in season 7. They wanted to give the Night King a dragon. Okay. That's what they wanted to do. So they needed to come up with a convoluted way to get Dany up north where the Night King could kill a dragon. So they spent 4 episodes doing that. Like, that was all that was. Okay. And so again, it's such poor writing, but it's directional writing. It's where they need a plot point to happen. So they're going to come up with a way to make that happen. Okay. And it was just dumb. I thought they never paid off Bran's character arc. So he has the three-eyed raven, all the setup that we got back when he was learning to be the three-eyed raven, the fact that he could influence the past, the fact that he essentially created Hodor, like all of that, we never got a payoff on. So they set up all this, what could have been amazing story stuff. And then they destroyed it. Like, they just did nothing with it. Horrible. Like, horrible. Yeah, Jaime's arc. I'm actually not as mad about Jaime's arc as I am some of the other ones, because I think the idea that he's addicted to Cersei makes some sense. Because she was always evil and he always knew it. So, you know, that part of it was a little bit more believable to me than some of the other ridiculous junk that happened. But the idea that Jon Snow would have been a great king, Jon Snow was an idiot. He was a great guy who was an idiot. It's like saying Ned Stark would have been a great king. No, Ned Stark was a political idiot. So, like, I felt like they were inconsistent. And again, that can happen when you don't have somebody overall keeping the story where it needs to be. So, hold on one moment here. Okay, what else is going on here? The Horn storyline would have been better. Agreed. Did Bran control the things to become king? Again, that would have been pretty cool, Daniel, if we had seen that. If Bran had done that. But we don't know that. Like, it just seems like such a weird, like, Bran disappears into some ravens and they fly around during the Battle of Winterfell. Like, we were hoping there would be some greater significance to that, and there wasn't. It was just dumb. Okay. The Night King. Actually, I have an opinion on this, but it's kind of a red spoilers for Wheel of Time. But the Night King and his death, I will hint at the character I'm talking about, is a buildup that amounted to nothing. In the very same way that a major villain in the Wheel of Time, and I won't say who, but most of you know if you've read the books, ends up being a dud of a villain in the final book. It was that same letdown because we had a build-up and then we had a victory that didn't seem earned. Okay? So, any case, that was my issue. Well, MK, you should be quiet because there are people that are spoilers here. I'm trying not to talk about it. All right. How come they didn't show Bran looking for the dragon? I don't know. It would have been cool to see that. As Sanderson said, the purpose of the storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. Agreed. But there need to be enough things there to give you something to think upon. A good example of this in storytelling is the movie Inception. So whether or not the top at the end is still spinning or not, that's an awesome discussion maker. So they gave you just enough to think that at the end of that movie, he could still be in a dream or it could be real. They give you enough for both. That's a good example of that. What they did here was just crap. I'm sorry, it was just bad. I think it was horrendous that Jaime slept with Brienne and then ditched her, not only to sour our memory of him, but it lessened the impact of her final scene for me. It should have remained a friendship. Agreed. I think that would have been a very good way to leave it. Titus, I believe the fact that most cultural aspects in Wheel of Time are not dialogue. It is what will help the show make them abridged. RJ spent literally thousands of words describing it. The show don't tell. I guess maybe I'm missing the context of what you're talking about, so I'll look for more of that. But then nothing. Agreed. Harriet is she's a consulting producer on the show. Okay, so and Sanderson is a big part of it as well. So he's not a part of the show. Sanderson isn't, but he is consulting, and he has been given his I liked the final episode, but the whole lead up was poor. I actually started off thinking I was liking the episode until I started realizing how dumb the decisions were. Like the idea that they miraculously teleported back to King's Landing again. Like they said it was a couple weeks, so we had a time jump there. But like, okay, so Jon assassinates Dany, and then somehow the Unsullied kept Jon alive for 3 weeks while everybody traveled there. And then they said there's an army of the Northmen outside the city, an army of again, did they teleport? Like King's Landing by land from Winterfell is like a month of travel time. Just stupid stuff. And the idea then that we have the end where we've got this election of leaders and they decide on Bran of all people. Like just dumb. I'm sorry. It's just very disappointing to me. Tyrion will run everything because Bran will just be there looking through the eyes of the world for a good story. Agreed. I just dumb. I'm glad Tyrion did not necessarily become the king, but I would have loved to have seen Sansa become the queen. Or I'm okay with Jon not becoming the king, but if they wanted to subvert expectations, Bran was not the answer. Okay. Okay. They should have just elected Edmure Tully. Yeah, for sure. Or Sweet Robin for king. By the way, Sweet Robin grew like 5 feet and looks like he is, 23 years old now. That was funny. So in any case, guys, hey, I am absolutely losing my voice. It's already been gone, and so this isn't helping. I'm going to give it here another couple minutes. So let's give me kind of your last thoughts here, and we'll kind of wrap up here in a few minutes. But Sansa becoming queen has been my theory. I think she earned it. Her arc, she earned it. Okay, I would have loved to have seen Sansa become the queen. I loved Sophie Turner. I would have loved to have seen there be a queen at the end that was sane. Not because I'm a crazy radical feminist or anything like that, but because I think they earned it. And I don't like the male savior trope where Bran, who did nothing, is now the savior of the kingdoms because he did nothing. I just think that was ridiculous. And they ruined a great character in Daenerys. So, yeah, I thought that was dumb. So, in any case, guys, that is the end of Game of Thrones. I will here very shortly have a video coming out, as I was explaining to you all. I'm trying to put together a video on basically what Wheel of Time can learn from Game of Thrones. And so I'm going to formulate that. I'm going to get that out here in the next couple of days. Also, a big heads up to all of you. I am moving this week, so this background is going to go away. I'm in the middle of moving. So videos are going to be sparse this next week or week and a half. I'm going to try to get some out here. But just know if you don't see anything, it's because of that. And so, yeah, Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I just thought we would get a chance to kind of decompress here, and hopefully you all enjoyed. But now that we're done with Game of Thrones, full force into Wheel of Time. I'm excited. Thanks, everybody.